As you may or may not know, here at the Singing Teachers Talk podcast, we are bringing you a series of repertoire-focused episodes to inspire fresh ideas in your studios, to help target particular vocal technique challenges, to maybe fill some gaps in specific styles, and to just help grow your knowledge and that repertoire list. This week, we are welcoming Hannah Smikle back to the podcast as we look at 10 songs to explore pop styling. Whether you're focusing on onsets, range, agility, tonality, or stylistic flair, these 10 songs picked by Hannah help singers to develop their own pop sound. So grab a cuppa and let's explore the songs which can help bring pop styling to life in your studio and in your singers' voices. Hannah, you know the episode in Friends where Ross is trying to find out why Phoebe is annoyed with him, and he goes through some rapid fire questions to see what the first thing is that pops up in her mind to get the answer?
Go on.
Well, I've got a similar task for you right now, so are you ready?
Oh no. No.
Favorite song of all time?
Got just Can't Make You Love Me, Bon Iver's version.
Favorite color?
Bluish.
Favorite current pop artist?
I'm still a Billie Eilish fan.
Best flavor of crisps?
No. Maybe some sort of salt and vinegar exquisite vibe kettle chip thing.
Hardest pop style to teach?
Ooh, probably riffing.
Favorite pop style to teach?
Oh, belting.
You did very well. That's your first task done and dusted.
Sorting.
And if I haven't given you enough tasks, the other task I gave you was to come up with 10 of your favorite songs to help singers explore pop styling. So in the first episode of this series, I touched upon some of the opposing sides of choosing repertoire for singers. As a singing teacher and voice coach yourself, where do you stand on that? Do you like to choose songs for singers, or do you like them to do it?
I think it depends on what the outcome is, what the desired outcome is. I think for me, I always say that I work with singers to explore the songs that they love. I think if they choose the song, then they are likely going to be more invested in practicing, listening to the song, exploring the song, being inspired by the song because they'll enjoy it. So I don't always suggest songs. If there's a particular aesthetic or skill or something that they really want to nail, then yeah, I'll kind of have a little think through the library and see what might be appropriate for that singer to explore that particular goal. But generally, I get them to choose, and we'll go with the artists that they love and work with their style in the genre that they really enjoy.
How do you collate all of your songs that you might then refer to as that library?
Yeah, I think I've just collated a whole pool of songs just over time. I've had a lot of experience myself as a function singer, pop singer, singing contemporary styles over the years, and I just have a library in my head. I also have a various amount of playlists that I've got in terms of, again, songs that I've gigged, songs that work really well for kind of live music and performance in the kind of contemporary pop styles. So yeah, so that's kind of how I've collated over time. And I think working with lots of different voices, you just get to know lots of different songs and also be inspired by what other singers are singing right now. I love the feature of Spotify radio, so listening to songs like this artist, and that can be a great way as well of finding more inspiration and collating to that rep list.
We chatted for episode 112 of this podcast on the topic of helping musical theatre singers build a reliable pop toolbox, which was about 2 years ago now, which has absolutely flown by. In your studio with all your singers, what are you finding to be the most common pop texture that singers are wanting to accomplish? And has that changed for you over the last 2 years?
That's a really good question. I think singers still really love to belt. I mean, who doesn't love to sing with a powerful energy, singing something emotional with meaning and conviction? So we still love that. And I love that, so that helps. I think Again, riffing is something that is one of those things that people really enjoy exploring. I know it can be really challenging from a technical point of view. So that's been an interesting one as well. We'll look at that today in our song choices as well, just to kind of explore different ways to introduce that and also the more advanced sort of riffing out there. But yeah, I think those two things are really still quite common. I think there has been an influx in singers who are quite happy to use the breathy kind of singing, the more kind of ethereal tone to their voices. And that can be a really nice one to do and a nice alternative to offer for those singers who maybe don't want to belt or don't feel comfortable in that more energized sound, because maybe that doesn't match their aesthetic as an artist or stylistically. So I think that's been good as well to explore, and to explore that kind of softer singing, particularly if you're a recording artist and you can play around with mic technique and picking up this really subtle moments in the voice and the breath. So that's really fun too. But I think generally it's been pretty consistent.
When we are exploring those pop textures, whether that's a type of vocal fold closure or an onset, offset, a riffing pattern, what do you think is really important to keep in mind?
Again, it goes back to the singer's intention. So are we looking for function or style or both? And you can achieve both. That's absolutely fine. I think if a singer is looking for more of a functional application, a functional goal, so to achieve that firmer closure, then yes, we can look at that. If they're looking for a more of a stylistic outcome, then it's finding ways to kind of explore both, and they can serve each other. I think the function comes before the style though, and I like to explore the array of options of onsets and textures first, so that the singer has awareness and knows kind of how to implement the different types of closure or the different types of onset that we might have functionally, and then they can then use that stylistically to explore their particular piece.
Yeah, I've been working with singers recently who are really excited to have found a fry onset or a riff. But it's when you ask them, oh, why there? Why that phrase? They can't always answer that. And that's okay. Maybe it's because you just liked it, but maybe there's a more communicative, appropriate place to put it to get across a message or an intention, not just because you're very good at finding those particular things.
Yes, exactly. And it's also about kind of zooming out of the piece and thinking about the journey, the storytelling, the progression that song's going on, even within kind of pop songs, pop lyrics, because you don't want maybe like that flagship sound, maybe it's a fry. You don't want that on every onset, the beginning of every line, because it's going to sound a bit disruptive at points, I think, if it's well used and well worn. So I think it's also thinking about, like you say, the intention of why. What is that helping you do? So if it's a functional thing, you're using it from a functional perspective because the fry will help you to maybe get a little bit more balance or closure. And therefore, you're using it on a particular pitch because that will help you with stability. Great, that might be a great choice for that moment. But if that's the only skill that you're using to achieve that particular outcome, we're going to hear it quite a lot. So it's how can you get maybe that same outcome if that's a kind of a repetitive thing through a song? How can you get the same outcome maybe using different skills? Like I said, going back to the intention of thinking about what is the journey of the song and what is the emotion in the song? Because actually, fry, when we're using that kind of almost sounds quite laid back, lazy, it lacks vocal folds. So what does that communicate? And does that work? Does that work well with what you're trying to communicate through your song? I think there's lots of different ways that you can use that, and it's in sort of weighing up that function versus style, and is the function of that particular onset or offset, like you say, supporting the style too? Is it collaborative?
Let's get into your song choices then. So where are you taking us for number one?
Well, we're going to look at a whole kind of spectrum of different stylistic skill, and we'll talk a bit of function as well as we go through, because both is important, all right? So this isn't necessarily a top 10 counting down. This is just different ways to embrace the pop vocal. So first of all, we're going to look at kind of breathy singing and where we can hear that and why we might want to embrace that. So we have to start with Queen of breathy singing. It's got to be Billie Eilish, hasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. She featured in my list a couple of times ago with her song The Greatest. You can hear a lot of her songs have that touch. So what song did you go with?
Absolutely. Well, to be fair, pretty much all of her songs has got breathy singing in it. She's really well known for it, but I think the one that I've gone for is probably the least extreme of her breathy singing because of how high she takes it up. The Greatest is lovely. There's a song called When the Party's Over. There's another one called Ocean Eyes, which are really lovely. They do really just get up there. So I like Lovely for this because I think it's slightly easier as a vocal. It's also a little bit more progressive in terms of the verses start lower down, and then almost like a scale, they graduate through a pitch range to where the chorus, I think it might be a C5, starts on this kind of breathy descent, which is quite nice. So I really like Lovely, Billie Eilish, for working with that more like breathy, singing breathy onsets in the chorus. It's a good one for people maybe who don't want to go super high, but are quite happy to explore a fair amount of vocal range, because the thing is with Billie Eilish as well, she's got a really great range and does cover a fair bit in nearly all of her songs. So aside from the breathy singing, you also get the challenge of navigating, starting in chest voice, progressing through the mid-range, and then ending up in your head voice. So it's a really great one to tick so many boxes.
I quite like that choice also. If you've got a singer who is just very used to having a wheelhouse in strong vocal fold closure and belting and high intensity, is to actually get them to add another tool to their toolbox and say, how about going the opposite end and exploring that adduction level, which is on the more open side. So yeah, taking a Billie Eilish song and getting them to just have a whole new experience with adduction can be really useful. What sort of consonants do you use and vowels do you use to help a singer to find that breathy quality?
Yep. And well, I love an H for this, because when we're in that, we're starting with an H anyway, we've got no closure. So that is going to give us lovely, or definitely not firm closure anyway, like we're talking about. So if we want to come away from firm closure, that really aspirate way of starting sound will be a lovely way to explore that. And then narrow vowels like an oo, so pairing an H and an O together, giving a lovely soft narrow vowel. So even just using a oo to navigate the melody, and lots of kind of sighing. Like the breathy singing is very like, there's like a sense of it being very thin and light and just really effortless, and gentle glides to kind of descend and slide off are really nice to explore here.
You mentioned earlier about microphone techniques. So when we are doing the breathier tonalities, what might we need to, or could we make use of in terms of the microphone?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, depending on what microphone you use, the pickup pattern might be different and varied. Usually, if we're using like a SM58 or something like that, generally kind of microphones that we'll be using out in live performance, the pickup pattern will be directional. So that means that the sound waves ideally need to be going straight in to that grill. So using your microphone really quite close up will catch the nuances of the breathiness in the sound. So when you are doing your you might not need to really use much energy or effort at all if it feels like it's really quite high for a singer. But there's, it's healthy singing that's still okay, but it's just high and it might feel quite quiet because maybe they're using a very breathy sound. If we were working with a microphone and a speaker or a PA or something like that, we can play around with proximity. So the closer you are into your mic, the better. You're going to be picking up all the nuances of the sound waves. Obviously, the opposite is to be said of when we are belting, we're going to have quite a lot of energy, a lot of acoustic energy. So then we may need to be pulling back for that. And it's about exploring that. And I think it's really lovely, particularly if you are recording, to spend some time gaining a bit of awareness around your own sort of vocal energy and the proximity that you need to get the aesthetic that you require. And it's quite interesting, really, when you are doing that kind of breathy singing, because if you are in that pop world, you can very much rely on your microphone to help you to secure some of these very delicate, vulnerable textures in the voice without effort. And that can be really fun to explore.
You mentioned the word vulnerable there, which is what I would maybe associate with that breathy tone. There's a vulnerability. Maybe it also would work with quite a relaxed, kind of floaty feel. How would you use that? What sort of emotions are being brought up for you when someone uses breathiness?
Definitely. Well, I think it sort of depends on the song, really. It could be a wistful, dreamy song where it's quite hopeful and there's a longing and something quite beautiful in the distance that somebody is speaking about. Or it can be the opposite, and it could be quite heavy with a heartbreak. And we talked about this kind of sigh before. There could be sort of a bereftness to the vocal and a disappointment,
or even like a seduction.
Wow, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Yeah.
That's my technique.
I talk about that in terms of closure. I always do an impression of the M&S advert, and we talk about sort of M1 or M2, or like firmly closed or a little bit more aspirate, and kind of where you want to be on that spectrum and why. So it's a fun one to really play around with, for sure. And I think as well, you talked about being quite floaty with the voice. I think sometimes movement can be really helpful to explore finding that, particularly if somebody, like you say, is quite chest voice dominant or is used to belting or powering stuff through. They might feel like, to get those notes, what we need to do is recruit a little bit, or just hold on. And actually what we need to do is let go. I use the analogy of letting your shopping bags go. So we're taking the weight up, maybe in your chest voice, or you're experiencing something that feels like a sense of contraction almost. That muscle is staying on. And then the opposite, what we want to do is just let the weight out, let the bags go. So I might talk about letting the bags go in lessons, and the idea of just, what does it feel like to just let that go. And a movement can be useful, so like a little very gentle head rotation, the idea of floating. So sometimes I'll get people just have a little walk around, just so they can let go of any of that holding on in this particular pitch range, and they can, might be a shoulder circle, or just a bit of, like you say, embodying that floatiness in the voice, but also within the body. And that can be really useful for people to connect in with.
I love on Chris Johnson's Evolve course, he has a webinar on NRGs, which I think is from the work of Arthur Lessac, talking about how to embody certain physicalities to reflect what the energy of the song is. And so he might use floaty arms, or one that I tend to find is useful for a bit of electricity is the twinkle finger. And or like if you want some power, as arms wide, because you find that if you do those actions, the voice follows along, and it influences the vocal quality that you might want to bring on board for that particular moment. Song number 2 then, where are we off to?
Well, to offer a little bit, light and shade here. So similar place in the voice, but not all the way up. We thought how to explore sort of this middle chest voice. So if you're a bit of an alto, we've got your back, taking that up and establishing that upper end of chest voice. I think quite often I see this sort of A4, B flat. B is just a real moment in many voices. What I love about this song by Queen Adele, Make You Feel My Love, although written by Bob Dylan, just trivia, is what I like about this one is that we've got in the chorus, we've got the repeat sustain, I know you haven't made your mind up yet, but we've got this kind of moment where we are hanging on or banging on that B flat, and that's really tricky. So I really, really like this one to help really sort of bed in chest voice and to explore the upper part of chest voice. Again, the verse is kind of a bit lower down, and then we graduate into the chorus for that B flat. So often I'll change the key, and if somebody is maybe happy up until a G sharp, say that's where they're really comfy in their chest voice, we'll really bed that in, make that feel quite established, and then we'll eke it up a semitone at a time until we get to that original key.
When you're helping somebody to establish that higher part of chest, what do we need to have in place in order for that to ascend with ease?
Well, this is often why I'll change the key. And I think within pop music and CCM singing, we are fortunate, I guess, in that we can play with that to our heart's content, and that can really serve us well as a tool. So in terms of somebody having that in place, that is where I do change the key, because quite often it might be that that B flat is just slightly out of reach, and that it feels like a reach to get it and to establish it. And we may see that recruitment, that squeezing on, a bit of constriction, maybe a bit of a sweat. But, it doesn't feel good, and it's not a great experience for them. So definitely to kind of take that away from the top edge and find that place in the voice where they're able to experience that chorus in a place where we're not seeing that kind of external recruitment, that we're not hearing that within the voice, that's kind of press or squeeze or yell almost, And a big indicator for that for me is body language. So I'm always observing someone's body language and seeing what signals they're giving off. How high are those eyebrows going? What is going on with the up here, kind of this sense of constriction? What's going on with the jaw? Also, even just general facial expressions of like, oh my word, that sort of look of shock of like, oh, we're going higher, we're going higher. So I think in order for someone to be quite established in their range, I'll be looking for those things and make sure that their voice is in a place that is quite secure before taking it up. And that would be thinking about effort levels, muscular recruitment, body language, and then from there I would be progressing. So can we get that chest voice in a place where we're not pulling chest? So going beyond what feels sustainable. Are we using extra things there to hold on and hammer on? Or actually, are we finding flow and ease there? Is the airflow good? And are the effort levels manageable?
Taking that a little further up then, maybe into like a belt type sound, is song number 3. So what is that for you?
Oh, yes, I love this one. To progress on. Right, so we've established our lovely B flat. We're up there, no recruitment, lovely access, everything's feeling really good. So then we eke it up that little bit further. And what I love to explore here is Shallow by Lady Gaga. And in this song, we have, again, a similar thing. We've got continuation of the theme here. We've got that 4/4 note, I'm off the deep end, right? C5, if we're doing that in the original key, well, it could be a bit of a challenge. And also what we're sort of balancing here is not only the pitch in chest voice, we're also, because it starts with the I for I'm off the deep end, we've also got to kind of play a bit of a balancing game with the onset. So we've got to explore that as well. So do we go full force with the glottal onset and have that firm closure and I'm off the deep end? Does that feel too much, too forceful? So do we need to roll that off and try and find something a little bit more balanced, a little bit more simultaneous? Can we have a less energy there? Do we use something stylistic like a fry and I'm off the deep end? Or do we slide that up in pitch? I'm off the deep end. I mean, we've got tools, haven't we? We've got lots of fun ways to explore that. And I think it is all about the singer and relating it back to them. What's going to feel comfortable? What's matching their aesthetic? What do they want out of that moment? But because of the pitch of where it is, C5, we also want to make sure that the singer is accessing that in a way that feels mindful, respectful, and they're essentially not just yelling at us.
I can imagine that there might be some consideration for the vowels as well, because if you've got I'm off there and then you go into deep, how do you help singers to navigate the E vowel on a more belted quality?
Well, I think the hardest one is the first note. Because again, going back to the onset, that really sort of sets us up for the line, and you will still be in that sort of setup when you get to the deep. So I think that first moment is really crucial. And I like to think about kind of eating an apple. An I is the worst, like for me anyway. But I've seen over time that an I on a top pitch, trying to get that in a belty setup is just really unfair and unpleasant. So I like to think about widening that in some sort of way, making it feel a little bit more accessible. I'll often refer to like biting an apple, taking a bite out of an apple and kind of getting like an arm off the deep end rather than aim off the deep end, because that's a difficult one to navigate. And then you're also thinking onset, you're also thinking pitch and intensity. You know, it's a whole moment, isn't it, on that first word. So yeah, I think once you've set that up and you've got that ba 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 ba, I think the rest follows a little bit easier. I'm a big fan of smiling on an E. I know it seems an obvious one, but definitely lifting and brightening that pitch if it's feeling a little bit, if it's starting to kind of fall off the end by the time. This is quite a strong phrase to navigate. So I do love a little E, a smile there. And also, if you're still struggling for closure, when you get to that word, using the D of the deep is going to give you that little kick out the door, so to speak, to give you a bit of that reinforcement for the closure. So I think there's a lot you can do there with the lyric to explore that more intense sound.
Hey you! If you're enjoying the Singing Teachers Talk podcast, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We are committed to bringing you engaging conversations and valuable insights from experts across the field of voice. By subscribing, it means we can continue to do that. You'll never miss an episode, and you'll be helping to spread the word to other singing teachers, vocal coaches, and overall voice nerds. So subscribe to this channel now and just watch your teaching grow. What's one of your favourite ways to help somebody to find the intensity and like a belt quality? Maybe on an exercise, or whether you use the melody as the exercise?
In terms of exercises and sounds we can explore, this is a really tricky moment, I think. And so we're trying to find the intensity without the effort. And I think that also is something to explore and balance. So for me, I use a puffy cheek, or some people call it the blowfish or the pufferfish, where we've got puffed out cheeks, very small space at the front of the mouth to allow some airflow through. Now, I will say with this one is that you can graduate the amount of airflow. So we can be quite backed up, if you like, with a very small space at the front of the mouth. That will give you a lot of reinforcement or back pressure to help those vocal folds close efficiently, but without the sense of strain. And then you can slack that off. So particularly if I'm using this as in an exercise like a scale, there comes a point, obviously, when our registers want to transition, and it's just too resisted. It feels too much pressure, too much back pressure. So then I'll suggest that the singer sort of slack off, allow more airflow through, or to graduate from the puffy cheek to more of a trumpety, where we've just got almost like a bit of a pocket of air up the top here rather than backed up in the cheeks. And we've got more airflow. So to navigate the register change, you can maybe play around with the amount of closure that you have to add to the resistance. But if it's feeling good, for some people, the resistance feels really, really nice to get that firmer sense of engagement, and that can be really great here. So yeah, I would play around with either some short scales like a 5-tone scale or something like that, because of where the pitch range sits, and you want to isolate that sense of function and coordination within a particular pitch range. It could be a little 3-note scale, just something dead simple. But ultimately, I wouldn't stay there for long. I would get into the melody, and again, change the key if that C5 feels just a little bit too intense right now. drop it down. Maybe start with a G sharp as the top note and then go up to the A, and then take it up a semitone at a time and go from that place where you've found full stability. There's no kind of sense of squeeze or press. You're exploring that lovely balance of chest voice and good sort of muscle and breath ratio and engagement. Then once you've got it there, take it up another semitone, then take it up another semitone, and just play around with what feels respectful and enjoyable and sustainable. Ultimately, particularly if they're a performer, you want to make sure these sounds are sustainable and not just for the one moment in the one song, but you can zoom out and say, hey, you're doing a 245-minute set. How is this song really? How is this key really? How is this intensity really for you? And is that going to be something that's sustainable? It all really depends on what the outcome is for the particular singer.
To this day, what song have you always got the words wrong to?
Do you know what? Things have changed. From when I first started gigging, and I'm talking like, oh, I feel so old. But one of my first kind of function gigs was, I think it was 2007. And actually, this is a classic story where I forgot the words to a song. And back in the day there, we didn't have iPads like we do now. We would just have like song charts, and I'd have a folder. And do you know, I can't even remember the song it was. I think it might have been Celebration. And we was booked for a New Year's Eve ball at a really prestigious hotel. And it was just coming up to the midnight hour. And I think we'd sang Auld Lang Syne. And after that, we burst into a kind of celebration. And it hit the verse. It's like, yeah. Literally got no idea. So I just sang, and it's a happy new year. And I just literally made it up. And it was just one of those moments where I just could not remember a thing. And then it was back into the chorus. And I was like, thank goodness. Ever the performer, you could just carry on, you know. But things have changed now. And I think particularly from a function band point of view, like, that was right at the start of my career, obviously, it's many moons ago. But now, I think the demands on a singer, if you're a function singer, if you're a dep session singer, you will have to learn so many songs. I think it's totally acceptable to take an iPad and providing you can perform, you're not just eyeballing your iPad for the whole gig. But, you know, to have there as a prompt if you needed so, I don't think it's going to inhibit your performance and actually help you.
The one that I think we all get wrong or miss here is Freed from Desire by Gala. It's always, my love is gonna money, he's got his trombolese. I always used to think it was trampoline, and then I thought it was tambourine, and then it was trombolese. But it is strong beliefs.
I thought it was strong beliefs. I was like, I've never been singing trombolese, but, you know, educate me of the ways. Yeah. I mean, there's so many misheard lyrics, aren't there? And there's so many funny reels out there. Pop articulation is a funny one. These two actually that I'm going to talk about now, you really do need to have your tongue around your teeth for it.
Tell us what they are.
So, Levitating, Dua Lipa. I like Dua Lipa's stuff. It's fun to perform. It's vibey. But goodness me, trying to get those lyrics out, and actually I think I pretty much have stumbled on this one in a live situation, but you just keep smiling and keep dancing, right? It's just this kind of percussive nature of the lyric and making sure you've got that kind of, you've got all this sort of energy. It's almost like, and it's not like, very chilled out rapping, but you've just got to kind of get this real percussive rhythmic flow, and that can be quite tricky, particularly in a live environment where you might have people dancing right in front of you, or, you know, you're in a live environment, so it can be quite a tricky one as a performer to really tune into that and execute that well. I mean, if it's just for fun and you're in a singing lesson, I think Dua Lipa uses lots of kind of speech voice quality, chest voice singing, and lots of kind of percussive speech work, which is really nice. Lots of stylistic delivery. Yeah, I would have a go at Levitating. And then another one that I gig as well that I enjoy. I actually really enjoy this one because of the rhythmic nature of it, is Shape of You, Ed Sheeran. Again, Similar thing, great for chest voice, great for diction, but there's just a lot in there. So if you're a bit late, if you're a beat late, or if you've maybe sung your syllable over the bar, you've gone, you've missed it. It's quite a tricky one then to kind of like catch up in the moment. So I do like those two because they're fun. They're really fun to sing and also really challenging for that kind of percussive articulation and that rhythmic diction.
I love a jaw stop and a tongue twister or a tongue drill or something to get the tongue a bit more mobile for those sorts of songs, if you're wanting an exercise to kind of initiate that.
Speed is a really interesting thing, isn't it? And sometimes people can't necessarily get it at that tempo. So I think a good tool for that is using like a speed shifter app. There's lots of those that you can use where you can put the track in and take the BPM down. I really like using just simple playback speed on YouTube. So turning the playback speed down on YouTube videos can be really helpful to get tricky phrases or riffing phrases, which is what we're going to look at next, I believe.
Yes, we are. We've got 2 songs under this umbrella for your list. So what are they and why these 2?
Oh, it's such a great skill, isn't it? Such a fun skill, but I do know that it can be really challenging for people to explore. So I've got a couple of options. Lay Me Down, Sam Smith has got some lovely moments in there. Just some really juicy melodies in there to have a play around with. I'm going to always refer back to the key. Play around with the key to make it work for your voice. There's some lovely moments, but I think my ultimate riffing song that I really enjoy is Don't You Worry About a Thing, Tori Kelly. And I love it because there's everything in there. It's basically a whole school on singing, from range to registration changes to riffing. And obviously it's a cover, so it's Stevie Wonder is the original artist, and it's actually in the same key, so it can work well for lots of different singers. Though it's fairly high, I would say it's up there in the sort of the tenor range, but it's a really great one to work with because there's a lot of scalic melody and it's quite progressive. So it's a really, really good one to use from a teaching point of view, to just take moments from the song and build exercises around it. Just use moments from the chorus, those descending melodies where you're doing and just use those little building blocks. Again, speed, tempo, play with that. Slow it right down. Get the movement between those moments in the vowel, and then you can progress it that way. Again, change the key if it starts too high, take it down. So just using the melody in any part, but there's lots in the chorus that feel quite accessible, and use those as little building blocks. But yeah, there's lots of stylistic moments in here that are quite typical across pop music, and particularly with the riffing. There's so much in there to get your teeth stuck into, and it is a really, really advanced song. So you know, I will use it often with singers, but I won't necessarily take them all the way through the song because it's not necessary. You don't have to be able to accomplish the entire song to be able to learn something really great from it. So I think taking moments from the song that really works well for your singer and their particular goal and the outcome that they're wanting to work towards can be really valuable, even without finishing the entire song.
Numbers 8 and 9, you've called range riders, which I really like and will be stealing. So tell us about songs number 8 and 9.
Oh, yeah, it's just something to get your teeth stuck into kind of from bottom to top, really. Just set yourself a bit of a challenge. I mean, to be fair, Don't You Worry About a Thing, it ticks that box as well, but you've got the added challenge of having to be very technically agile. So I think if we take that away, but take the same principle of going kind of from bottom to top of voice, Something by Sia is going to tick your box. I love Titanium. But obviously she's got Chandelier as well. There's plenty of other, just look down Sia's back catalogue and I'm sure you'll find something that ticks a box there for riding a vocal range. She's got a brilliant voice for this because there's a lot, well, if we think about Titanium, there's a lot of emotion in the song. We talked about kind of emotion and intention earlier, but you can really get your teeth into what the song means, I think. And that, therefore, gives you real connection with then how the voice will translate that emotion. There's some great imagery and some powerful lyrics in this song. So I think really coupling the intention with the function is fantastic then for taking that up through the range where we really hear these kind of really powerful vocal qualities. And it's just a lot of fun to sing. Another singer as well that I might as well mention while we're in here, Jess Glynn uses a fair amount of vocal range from bottom to top. I like Rather Be, that's quite a nice one. You don't necessarily have to take a full belt up with that one, like you might do in a titanium, because it's not as emotionally driven in that way. So I think you could afford to be on that no, 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 up there. You could afford to be a little bit light. You don't have to belt it as much, particularly if you are going to be gigging it as a part of a pop function band set. You might find it quite labor intensive to be belting that repeated melody. Or she's got quite a lot of other songs to get stuck into that offer a lot of range, but maybe you don't want to take intensity all the way up, although she does quite a bit. But my other option as well for the kind of male vocal is to maybe explore Beautiful Things by Benson Boone. And aside from being a great vocal, the performance on that song in any of the performances, if you watch any Benson Boone performances, they are just phenomenal in terms of energy as a pop performer. I feel like I don't want to give away if you've not seen any of the live performances. There's a particular skill they have that they use with their body that is just incredible to watch. Yeah, they're just a fantastic performer. So I think it's worth checking Beautiful Things out, Benson Boone, because again, the range, the intensity, the registration, the challenges that are in that vocal are just a lot of fun to play with. So yes, what do you think about those?
Benson Boone, love, not just for the vocals, but because of the fact that the moustache is being rocked on a different level than I think other people can rock a moustache.
Yeah, and it's the suits, it's the everything, the whole aesthetic is just, it's giving a lot of style, it's giving a lot of energy, and I guess that works with the voice. It matches the voice. And again, if we're thinking about kind of contemporary performers, it's all about the whole package, and it works really well. It's very complimentary.
I had a question which is slightly off topic in terms of finding your pop textures, but it's something that you brought up to me in one of our famous voice notes, is how can we take something like titanium, say we're taking it to an audition and the only instrument being played in the room is a piano. How do you find your pop textures and your pop songs to take into such an environment when you're not going to have drums or a bass or any of your guitars around you?
Yeah. And that is where things change. And actually, Titanium is the perfect example. We'll come back to audition in a moment, but I'd sang this in a full band, I think, before. And then the guitarist in the full band was the same as my guitarist when I played in an acoustic duo. So naturally, when we got booked for a acoustic gig, we borrowed a lot of the songs from our function band set. Now, performing that in a quiet bar while people are having their dinner was not the one. It wasn't the one in that key, and it wasn't the one to continue belting. And I found that out really quickly. And that's okay, because sometimes we do these things and we're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can sing this song. But in this context, it's not quite right. How do you retain this style? How do you retain the vocal, but in a different context? Again, I'll always bring up key, changing the key, taking it lower down so it didn't feel as intense, not just for me to sing, but for people to listen to. You don't want to be blaring out Titanium when someone's trying to eat the pizza, you know, they're going to choke on their olives. It's not just key though, is it? It's going back to intensity and emotion. And how can you put that song in the context that actually still serves it well, still serves your voice well, but makes sense? And so rather than kind of doing everything and being really quite firmly engaged in that place, going, oh, okay, well, what if I actually allow myself to use my head voice for a moment and let it go.
It's such a good point in terms of this song does not have to be the same way every single time, and that your versatility as a singer is to adjust to your surroundings.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's moments as a live performer when you can feel a sense of conflict, where you just feel like this isn't working. It's almost like trying to shoehorn a song into a space that it just doesn't feel like it's set up for. It's having that, I guess, flexibility and openness to go, okay, well, either we get rid of the song in this context, or we reharmonize it, we rearrange it, we look at how this song can serve in this space and serve well. So for me, with that particular song, I was looking at the key, it was looking at the intensity. So maybe if the guitarist was finger picking and not kind of strumming on and humming on, that then also needs to be reflected in my voice. So letting a lot of that weight out, being more on the sigh quality than the yell quality for sure, and using a lot more of that M2, that thin fold in the top end of my voice than in the chest register. And actually, that was a massive moment for me because it gave me so much more flexibility with my rep. It gave me more flexibility with my voice. It gave me more balance across the way that I was using my voice. And it was really, really helpful for me to have had that penny drop moment. And it's really actually impacted on my singing and my live performance going forward and working with other performers, because sometimes we do become attached to that original vocal or that original delivery and only seeking that for ourselves and imitating that way, that expected sound. But actually, it can be really refreshing to be in a bar or in a venue and you hear something, you go, oh, I know that song. And you can't quite put your finger on it. And then you go, oh, that sounds great. And that can be really brilliant. And that can be a real skill that we can bring as vocalists and performers in our entertainment and in our work.
But what about like the musical theatre performer who is needing to find a pop rock 80s decade song to take to like a cruise audition, and key changing isn't necessarily always as acceptable, but they still only have a pianist in the room?
I often recommend that people go with something that has got a really strong piano bass in the song. Alicia Keys, a lot of her songs are piano based. She writes on piano. So something like If I Ain't Got You is wonderful for this. You start in your chest voice, it's very progressive, melodic, and scalic. And then you pop into your head voice. You may pop into your head voice if you choose to stylistically. You can stay in your chest voice if you like. It goes up to a D5. So, choice of yours. But that's a really nice one because it's so kind of melodic. Or if you want to do some riffing and you love a bit of Alicia Keys, you can go back to the old school Fallin', gives you that great opener. And then somebody like John Legend, who again, keys based, writes on piano. I love All of Me for that. If you can't change the key, you might, to be fair, if you're an alto, you might work well as a female singing John Legend. I have some female vocalists that really sit well in his vocal range because he uses his falsetto and flips toward the top. So that's a nice one as well. So I would definitely recommend looking at pop singers who write with keys in mind, because a lot of their accompaniment will then be quite supportive from their keys line, rather than relying on kind of the external instruments, and the piano is more of that kind of holding down the back line. In the artists that are writing around piano, the piano is going to be quite intrinsic to the accompaniment and holding that melody together. So I would definitely start by looking at some artists that use piano in their songwriting. And Alicia Keys and John Legend are great pop vocalists that use some of these textures that we've been talking about today in their writing.
To round us off then, song number 10 is inclusive of one of my favorite qualities, which is this yodel flip. So what is your last choice that you're going to share with us today?
Well, I think there's too many. There's like so many to choose. So I just thought I'd throw a few ideas actually out. Payphone Maroon 5 has got a fun chorus to kind of explore the movement as we start to go up there. I think from just a fun exploration point of view and just as like a technical exercise to kind of get your teeth stuck into finding the balance and the imbalance between the registrational qualities, something like Zombie by the Cranberries is really fun to just weigh in on and play around with that balance and the weighing scales from chest to head and flipping around here. Or there's a song called There She Goes by the Lars, which is going back a little bit, but there's like it's a really fun little melody in the verse that's quite repetitive that you can use almost like as a warm-up because the intervals are quite close together. So that's a fun one to explore there. Now, you talked about pop music, and when we chatted a couple of years ago, how's it progressed in terms of the vocal styling? I think aesthetically, when I think back to when I first started teaching quite some time ago, a lot of singers just were chasing the belt. It was all about singing in chest voice beyond a C5 and getting C, D, E in this thick sound. What's interesting now, I think, is that there's more diversity in the marketplace in terms of pop singing. I think so, from a vocal point of view. Head voice is allowed. Breathy singing is celebrated. We can hear it across the genre. We can hear it across genders. We can hear it across voices. Belt quality and chest voice is not the only aesthetic that's desired now. And what's really fun is this moment that is often feared in singing, this registration change, has actually now become quite revered stylistically, where we can hear it in different vocal artists that are allowing themselves to have this moment exposed in all its glory and used for that stylistic purpose. And I think that's so wonderful because it gives freedom to singers to go, hey, this moment happens in my voice, but actually it's quite cool. Actually, it's quite fun. Actually, it allows me to express myself without the fear of needing to be perfect, needing to have balance, needing to have whatever that coordination is and have it right every time. It gives us permission to be flexible and just to let go of it. And I love that. I love that for us.
I think also this sort of style is quite good for musical theatre students to explore because we are quite hot on the old transition when you want to get smoothly through and we don't want to hear that break necessarily. But then you've got shows like Waitress and Hades Town and lots of pop doing it. So actually it's a chance for you to do both. You can smoothly go through if you want to, but you can also experience this Tarzan flipping, which is stylistically appropriate too.
Yeah, and a more recent one than the choices that I mentioned before, actually, I was listening to this morning, was Chapel Roan, Ping Pony Club. There's quite a lot of moments there of like imbalance, but in the most brilliant way. And I think I just love the freedom that gives us now, that we've got choice. And that's what I really love my singers to explore and to be connected with, that they have choice. You can have firm players, you can have breathy flares, you can have a flip, you can have it mixed, you can have the bottom end, you can have the top end, you can move around with agility and tempo, you can be percussive, you can be lazy, you can have fry, there's all of this color and texture. And I think it's about singers exploring, not putting pressure on themselves and having fun, singing songs that they love, that they're emotionally connected to and enjoy. And I love pop music for it.
Hannah, what have you been up to recently and what is the forecast for 2025?
Yay! Well, at the moment, so I am coaching privately in the Greater Manchester area, one-to-one, and I also run group coaching sessions for adults. So we have a 6-week sort of program where for the first 4 weeks, I'll teach different songs from the wide, varied pop genre. So this term, for instance, we've done Sweet Child of Mine, where we've done a very chilled out, sort of ethereal, acoustic version. We've done, we actually did a bit of Seasons of Love from Rent just for the harmonies. And we also did Bridge Over Troubled Water. So everything from modern day to back in the day, if you like, across contemporary music. And we have 4 weeks together where we learn a variety of songs. Then we have a little dress rehearsal. And then on our 6th session, we perform at a local venue. So we do that as a group, and then the group members get the opportunity to perform some solos as well. And it's just a wonderful evening of celebrating each other, encouraging each other in our kind of artistic and singing journey. And it's just fab. Yes, hopefully more of that as we go into the latter part of our year now. We're kind of heading into the midpoint, aren't we?
Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. Remind us, Hannah, where can we all find out more about you and follow your work?
I am at Vocal Performance Coaching. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, and vocalperformancecoaching.com is my website.
Amazing. Oh, always a pleasure, Hannah Smikle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.